The following content is provided under a Creative Commons license. Your support will help MIT OpenCourseware continue to offer high-quality educational resources for free. To make a donation or view additional materials from hundreds of MIT courses, visit MIT OpenCourseware at ocw.mit.edu.
Get started. All right, let's talk a little bit about today's reading. So, Rules of Play, this giant book that you see in front of you, and that you have the link to. How many of you, by the way, read the actual book, and how many of you just went online? How many got like a library copy or something? No, oh, it's monstrous, right? It is basically divided into three sections. There's rules, play, and culture. Basically, it's a collection of just what other people have said, but organized in a way that makes for a pretty good textbook. The first chunk is all about analyzing games as systems of rules, the bits that actually go into the construction of a game. The play section, which is what today's reading is from, is really about what people do with these games. And then culture comes after that, which is the world around the games, the world that might have been created by the games, of people actually interacting with this. So I don't think we have that many readings. This might be the last reading from this book. Let's see. Culture. We've got stuff. I think there's one. Oh, there is. Okay. There is one more reading, but I don't know if it comes from this book. Yeah. Bernie de Koven is the last reading, and that's going to be this Wednesday, I think. And that's going to be that's one of actually the writers that's cited quite a lot in today's reading, and it's a much smaller book. It's like this big, and it's easy reading. But it's a good jumping off point for this class, because this is literally where the book ends on thinking of games as designed objects, and things that could stand alone as a product. There's a set of rules that can be passed on from generations. This solid thing into what people make out of all of this. And if you're interested in that, then there's another class, I think it's CMS 616, Games and Culture. It should be offered, I can't remember if it's a fall class or a spring class. Right? Spring class? Okay, so it's offered this semester. If you're not a senior and you're going to be around for another year, you might want to consider that if you're interested, to sort of see where this is going. And obviously, there are a lot of researchers here in MIT that is starting to get into the realm of sociology. But there are folks here who study the history of games, folks here who study what people currently do with games. For instance, how many of you have met or taken a class from T.L. Taylor? Yeah, a few people. Yeah, okay. So she comes from a sociological background. A lot of her work is ethnographic, which means it's like the researcher going into a native culture, right, and seeing how people actually behave there, and why, and what they value, and what are the common practices. And she does it with originally with massively multiplayer online games. Now she did esports. That was her most recent book. Now she's looking at live streamers, and of course she has a lot of research and a lot of information. So that's a good person to learn from. Some of you also have come from Todd Harper's class. He's a postdoc here in our lab. He's taught quite a number of classes, both CMS 300 and CMS 100, as well as his own game design for expression class, where he looked a lot at competitive styles of play, competitive communities of play. So fighting games community was his dissertation. Looking at League of Legends right now, I think is pretty much what he's looking at now, as well as some other aspects like queer games and the people who play and make them. So that's another good angle to look at. So back to today's reading. There's a couple of really, really useful ideas in it that can be used for a variety of ways to look at and analyze your game, especially when you're trying to observe people playing your game and then trying to figure out what's going on here. And the games that we've got today, including some of the games that John has, are all these sorts of games where what's interesting about a game isn't so much what's written in the box, what's written in the rules, but what happens between people. And one would argue for many, many games, even the ones that are traditionally recognized for the magic of what's inside the box, what's actually interesting is what happens around the game. Last week we talked about Go, for instance. And it's like, okay, what's actually written about the rules of Go is not that elaborate, right? Really, really simple, and mathematically is really elegant. It's entrancing in the sort of way that mathematicians like an elegant formula. But what's also interesting is just centuries and centuries of strategies and culture that have built out around this particular way of playing. So there's a couple of useful tips that help us think about what happens in a game socially. That's internal, and that's internal interaction, and there's external interaction. So let's start talking about internal interaction. What do you think Zimmerman is talking about when he says an internal social interaction in a game?
So I think Phil talking about a lot about like how you feel about your role.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we talked about a lot about like different people have different jobs in games, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm supposed to be doing something different than you're supposed to be doing, even though we both might have the same goal, might not even have the same goal, but the same like idea to win or whatever.
And the reason why you have those differences is set up by basically how the game's rules are set up, right?
And the internal social interaction would be my idea about that. My idea about what my role in the game is.
Okay, so I think I'm Mafia, right? In a game of Mafia, I'm the Mafia, or one of the members of the Mafia. So I think I'm going to be able to play it out this way. The game rules tell me about when I can communicate and when I can't. Basically, everyone can communicate at the same time. Then everyone closes their eyes, and then you come up with a strategy on how you're going to play it. But it evolves from the roles that was given to you by the rules of the game. How about external interactions when it comes to social play? What's the flip side of that?
Like, I guess friendships outside of the game that you bring in. So
Mm-hmm.
like the Mafia example, say your friend's not on the Mafia, you'll be like, oh, he's my friend, I'll save him for last or something.
Yeah. I'll torment that guy for last because he's my friend, right? It's like I'm not going to eliminate him right away.
Another interesting one with that, I think, is also like the past experiences with Mafia. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I know that this person is really, really good at Mafia, so I'm just going to kill them on first round just because I really don't want to deal with it.
Right.
Seems funny or not.
Right. I just want to get them out of this game. Sure. Yeah.
That happens with a lot of games too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just like you team up on the scariest play.
Yeah. Couples playing, a game, and that's supposed to be all where everyone's supposed to be playing, and an individual game. Yeah, knowing that someone is a pathological liar, for instance. So that of course actually also comes in design, by the way. I used to write a game. I used to write games for the MIT Assassin's Guild, and there were 4 people who were playing games at the same time when I was writing games, and we always use these 4 people as ways that games are often broken mostly through weird social interactions, right? So there's someone who's going to be the rules lawyer, for instance, and someone who's going to stop the game in order to make sure that his interpretation of the rules is what everybody else is going to play with. Not necessarily to make sure that the rules are adhered to, just make sure that his interpretation is going to work. Somebody who's going to stop a game because they're always going to keep asking for reminders on how the rules work. It's just like, I'm just like, I can't handle this right now. All this is supposed to be happening simultaneously. Too much math. Stop. And I'm going to continue that. So this was a second kind of person that I had to design for. A third kind of person is a person who is so capable of just summoning the collective brain power of everybody to be able to like churn through any kind of puzzle that I can create, because this person was such a convincing speaker that basically he can use he can use your head like a node on a parallel computer. You would just say, can you do this thing for me? It would take a minute, and somehow you will do it. This person had that social skill. I'm trying to remember what the fourth one was. Oh yeah, someone who could there was one person who could do the same thing entirely on his own. It is like, if you've got a puzzle in the game, the puzzle will be solved by this one person sooner or later, if it wasn't already solved by someone else. So like, here's this giant macroeconomic system that I've set up or something like that, and that one person will figure out the optimal way to solve everybody's problems simultaneously. And it's like, okay. I have to design for that. So I have to design to make sure that each of these people don't break the game, but still can do the thing that they want, right? Some of the folks that I'm describing actually enjoyed that. Some of them didn't enjoy that. This is like, that's just the way how their brain works. But if the game falls to that, then they're not having any more fun than anyone else. So I knew something about who was going to be playing my games. By sort of knowing these 4 people, I could cover a very, very wide range of different ways that my games could like just fall flat on their faces. These were real people, but anybody who played my games could exhibit that same sort of behavior at an opportune time, and make sure that my rules could hold up to that. So when you design your games, how many of you are actually like have somebody in mind? Like someone particular about who's going to end up playing this game? Friend, family member, person in class? Yeah.
I mean, I think when I worked on the game launch in Card King, I think that like it definitely reminded me of like specific friends that I've played Twister with in the past.
Mm-hmm.
A game that I felt like something to take in like inspiration from.
Right.
But sometimes I don't have people.
The easiest one for me is just developing for myself.
Sure.
And people who enjoy the same types of games that I do, because I think that if I find a game fun, then people who enjoy the same types of games that I do will likely find it fun as well. And if I don't enjoy the game, then I probably shouldn't be making it.
Yeah, I mean, you are a sample point, right? You are a valid sample point. It just happens to be one that you know very, very, very well yourself. And there is a mantra out there that that's often mentioned by people in the indie game development community, which is you make a game that you want to play. And I'm not entirely sure whether I agree with that, but I can see where it's coming from. Because if you can't satisfy yourself, then the likelihood they're going to satisfy any other audience member out there, someone who could potentially play a game, is lower. But I think there is something about having to design for people who are not you, which is also valid, but obviously it's harder.
I was just going to say, I've heard it described as a Venn diagram with 3 elements. One is games that I want to play. The other one is games that other people want to play.
Yeah.
And the third and most important one is games that I can make.
Yeah.
And ideally, you want to be like right at the center.
Yeah.
The intersection of those.
Yeah, there's this vast set of ideas that you have in your head. Only a small group of which are things that you'd actually want to do, and then the smaller group of that are things that other people want to do. The smaller group of that is something you can implement. Sure, that absolutely makes sense. The feasibility thing, of course, is what we've been addressing this entire class, right? It's like, how do you actually make a game that you can make, as opposed to make a game you wish you could make. So if we've got lots of different kinds of people who you're making your games for, people who you've played similar games with in the past, for instance, people who you know are the kind of people who will break your game, right? And like when you're making the Twister game, you have to make sure that you can play the game without breaking it, because you are physically larger than a lot of folks and able to reach much further. And make sure that your rules, that you can design your rules for that sort of thing. But then there's also the sort of like broad categories of people, and that's where we get into the reference to Richard Bartle in today's reading. I did not include the whole article, but the whole article is online in like plain HTML. So if you just do a search for Bartle, I think it's I forget. I forgot the name of the book of the article. But if you just do a search for diamonds, hearts, clubs, spades, Bartle, you'll find it. I think it's like Players Who Suit Months or something like that. And a lot of that work was created when he was basically the originator of the very first multi-user dungeon. Anyone heard of months on multi-user dungeons? How many you played one of those? I think way too many. You've seen people play it. When you see, you're reading the text and the typing on screen.
At the high school, I went to people play this.
Huh? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so I saw it.
Okay. So, how many of you have seen or played a text adventure? All right. So, text adventure basically, everything is text. You've got verbal descriptions instead of graphics of the rooms that you're in and the objects you can pick up and what you can do. You've got an inventory that's explained to you in text. You've got text commands you can enter. Usually when you're entering in commands, it's a verb and a noun. Get key, open mailbox, get lamp, that sort of thing. Sometimes the single words like inventory, north. Actually, the full north command is actually go north, but then there are shortcuts where you can just type N and you will just go north. That's sort of north, south, east, west. A multi-user dungeon traditionally was a multiplayer text adventure. Everyone would just occupy the same space on the server. They will use something like Telnet or maybe a dial-up to on modem and call into to a server that will be serving them ASCII text. And then simultaneously connected to other people. It's very, very important that in multi-user dungeons, multiple people are connected simultaneously. It's not like an asynchronous thing where one person connects at a time, even though they're all logging in the same world. So, not all that different from what you expect from MMORPG nowadays, the massively multiplayer online role-playing games. Only, obviously, no graphics and much slower pace of game, right? Because everything has to be tight. You don't just walk north, you have to type in N at least. Inventory, I guess. All my examples are really fast examples. Give envelope to Bob. It's like you can actually give that kind of thing, and then you just transfer an object to somebody else named Bob in your space. And he described 4 different categories of people that he often saw playing his games that I think still holds up pretty darn well. So who remembers any of the 4 categories?
These are
Which are?
the kind of people who really get deep into the underlying sort of system there, who want to learn about how things work.
The diggers, right?
Yeah.
The miners, the people who... Minecraft is a great example for a game that's designed just for those people. People who want to explore how the system works, how the environment works, who want to discover things and see what's behind that next mountain.
I'll go with killers since I don't know
Yeah.
what this means.
Killers are
Clubs.
Yeah. And what's the justification for what they do?
They
What do they do?
find fun in causing other people pain.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The hearts of the social interactors, the people who like to be with people.
Yeah. The people who are there for the other people primarily. I mean, in a way, the killers and the socializers are there because other people are there, but they have different reasons. Okay. Yeah.
And the diamonds want to win.
And the diamonds want to win. That is by any definition of winning. Now, months traditionally did not have a definition of winning. You couldn't win that game. There wasn't any final bosses you could kill or anything like that. So you had to find your own metrics for winning, right? So it could be you're a PvP type diamond. You want to rack up the highest tournament score or something, but you're not there explicitly to cause people grief. You're not trying to hit them when they're not looking. Just it would be the sort of we're going to organize a duel kind of thing. We're going to see who can play this game the best, as opposed to making people upset. There's a way to remember this that I think is really, really useful. I actually find the playing card suits not so easy to remember, but I can actually remember the categories pretty easily by whether you are acting on something, or you're acting with something. And the question is whether you are acting or interacting. Sorry, that's I just put two different axes that meant exactly the same thing. So it's supposed to be this: interacting with. That's correct. And then there's the world, or the systems, and then other players. So if you're interacting with other players, we've got
Parts.
the socializers, right? And people who are acting on other players are the killers, right? Killers. Acting on the world. People want to act on the world. What was this? Heard someone say?
Take time.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely diamonds.
Diamonds. Which leaves this to be the
The explorers, the ones who
Want to
Yeah.
poke the world and see what that
Yeah.
They want to figure out all the underlying equations.
these are the glitch fighters, right? These are the people who figure out how to get outside the boundary, your invisible walls, who want to see whether there's a way they can get below the very lowest layer on Minecraft, you know, and what happens when you cram so much explosive in one area that you can't perform this experiment without killing yourself. They're the ones who are going to do it because they want to see what happens. Well, whereas these folks are really a little bit more about how do I use this world to be able to obtain some sort of other goal, which is usually like points, some sort of achievement, some sort of recognition from the rest of the players. They don't usually get that recognition, but they have a numerical number to show that they're deserving of it. And I find this to be a really, really useful way to think about what games can do to be able to cater to different people. Because the truth is that even though when you play a single game, you may be primarily one of these people, you may not play every game this way. Say I'm an achievement, someone who's trying to chase all of the points, right? You know, someone who's trying to get the top of the leaderboard in, I don't know, Flappy Bird or something. But that may not be the way that I'm going to play World of Warcraft. That may not be the way that I play Contract Bridge. I might be playing it more as a socializer when it comes to Contract Bridge. And different people are often different things in different games, and sometimes different things in the same game. Like right now, I'm trying. Everyone in this room probably knows by now. I play too much StarCraft, right? Usually, I'm trying to win. I'm trying to raise my rank. They have a ladder system. Sometimes I just want to zone out and talk to people. I just want to go into free text chat and be friendly for a while. I'll do something very dumb that takes no actions whatsoever, and I just leaves my fingers free to be able to type messages. And that's what I do this. Different times of the day, different moods that I'm in, I be something different. And if you can make a game that's able to cater to people of different in their different moods, then that's great. You've got a game that can be played in different situations, or more importantly, among a group of people who are all feeling kind of different at any given time. This is not the only breakdown that I've seen. There is a system that's been pitched by, I believe, a developer at Ubisoft Montreal, although don't take my word for that. Jason Vanderberg. And he suggests actually a system on the ocean model of psychology. Has anyone heard of this? It's like 5 big drivers of motivation that psychologists have basically created as a framework. And one of them is neuroticism. You know, it's that there are people who are motivated because they are neurotic, and I can totally identify with that. You know, it's like they want to be. It gives them comfort to be performing neurotic things. You know, things like 100%ing a level that's or a game or something like that. It's a motivator, right? It's this driver. It's no particular achievement to 100% a level in Metroid because a lot of people do it. But the fact that that number is there motivates a certain group of people to be able to bring that number from 99% to 100%. So I want to be clear that this is just a theory. This is just Richard Bardell, creator of the very first MUD in Oxford, I believe, United Kingdom, and he just wrote an article on a website. He would have put it up on a blog if blogs existed at the time, about these are the people that I happen to see playing my games, and if I can generalize these people in these 4 categories. Let's see. Other stuff that's covered in today's reading includes the idea of people bringing things from outside of the game into the game. And we talked a little bit about metagaming, and this article goes into a little bit more detail about that. So there's again 4 things that the book goes into when it comes to metagaming. And these were posited by Richard Garfield, designer of Magic the Gathering, because the way how he was describing it is that these are 4 kinds of metagaming experiences, and I'm trying to make a game that capitalizes that on people playing the game when they're not even really playing the game. When they're not sitting in front with their decks of Magic, they're still playing the game because they can do something else. And so, anyone remember what those 4 things are?
Things that you bring to the game.
Yep.
Things that you take from the game.
Right.
Things that you do between
between games.
people.
Yep.
Between games.
Mm-hmm.
And the last one is something else.
Last one is actually probably the more traditional understanding of metagaming. So even if you haven't read, you might be able to hazard a guess. You got those 3 spot on. That's right. Things that you do during the game that are not actually part of the game rules, right? So, what's some examples of things that players bring to the game from outside of the game they bring into the game?
So there's like physical objects, but also knowledge.
Right.
So to the baseball game, it'd be like your mitt.
Right. Your ball, things that you might require in order to even start the game in the first place.
Bridge or something would be cards, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But you can also bring knowledge. So chess is a game that I'm familiar with that you study up. They call it booking up on openings, different tactics, things like that you can study and bring to the game.
Yep.
It's basically like preparation.
Yeah. So if you're going into a competitive game, you might come in with a strategy that you intend to execute. That happens in sports a lot, right? Like we train these particular maneuvers, these particular plays.
And there's even like metagame against that. I guess that might be number 4. So like Magnus Carlsen, the world's best chess player, he like plays openings that are not that good, just to like screw with people's.
When you're playing the player.
Preparation,
yeah. And if you're playing the player, I think that still fits within the category of things you bring to the game, because that means that you are bringing to the game an understanding or a guess about what your opponent is like and how your opponent may have played before. Someone's reputation is actually stated explicitly in today's reading as something that you bring to your game. It's not something that you voluntarily bring to the game. It's just something that precedes you. Then what stuff do you take from the game?
So I guess the typical answer might be like enjoyment from the game or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
In the paper he talks about antiquing and Magic, where you win a card if you win the game.
Yeah, so that can be prizes. There can be cash prizes. There can be stakes.
If you're
You can play
gambling,
for stakes.
obviously there's a big incentive for the front part.
Yeah. Again, reputation. Yeah.
You can also take knowledge from the game.
Sure. It's like, especially games that you lost, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, you hopefully, especially in a game in the kind of game that I wish I could design one day, you take away something that deepens your understanding of the system that you just played. And that's wonderfully intrinsic motivation of something that arises from the rules, but it's not going to affect the game that you're playing that you just played, right? It's going to maybe affect your next game.
this is super cheesy, but you could take away like new friendships.
Oh yeah. Well, social games, people
Yeah.
who end up in this area during
New
game.
enemies.
All new enemies.
Every game
Yeah,
is
you
like a
can.
diplomacy game.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Diplomacy is great at like creating bad relationships. So yeah, okay. So stuff that you take away from the game makes a lot of sense. The interesting thing about the anti situation is that almost moves into the third category, which is the stuff that you do between games. It's like specifically, you're taking out of the game.
It's also
something.
You said that Richard Garfield made Anti, and he was like the first person to do that.
I'm not sure about that, but he made Magic the Gathering. He's the designer of it.
Okay, you said that he was like the first person for Anti. I was just
No,
gonna say
no,
that
no,
Antis
no,
were
no.
discontinued like as soon as the game was created.
Yeah. No. Well, I mean, he wrote it into the original rules, and nobody liked that part. Oh, at least very few people seem to like that part of the rules. So
yeah, every Anti card has been banned for as long as the game's been around.
well, okay. Yeah. But they are in his original rules, and but that's a mechanic that where it's like a mechanic imposed on top of the game. I guess it was part of your game originally, but now if it's played for anti, it's being played outside of the game because it's not part of the rules anymore. Where if you put your game, if both of you are putting a card up, say a really skilled player is going to play a really not skilled player, and the not skilled player says, well, chances are I'm going to lose, but the skilled player is anteing up an incredibly valuable card that I might not otherwise be able to get. So I'm going to ante up this like crap card that I will always be able to replace if I lose it. But it makes it worth playing that round, right? And then the game is on.
There's like an interesting thing that's happened. So playing Twilight Struggle, I found a game that has some luck in it. What it actually has, it has a very high appearance of luck involved in there. And so it's really easy to play this game and talk about and say that you like got really unlucky, or like to say that you got really unlucky. And I have definitely suggested pairs like after playing this game, both like started complaining to each other about how unlucky they were during that game.
Well, okay.
And,
I mean, that's something. Yeah, sorry, go on.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's just that's just like oftentimes like outside of this, people will start discussing like how people tend to have a tendency to be like lucky or unlucky in this game, and like and like, well, I've lost like, and someone might say like, oh, I've lost. I mean, even if it's saying like, oh, I've lost the last several games in a row, but I just got unlucky in all of them, or something like that. There.
Well, something that happens between games, it's like you brought up a couple of things, right? One is the sort of the discussion about how this game seems to be operating, right? And on Reddit, that tends to be very very angry conversation. But among friends who play games of Twilight Struggle or something, it's a sort of combination of like storytelling, which is man, it's just being able to recollect how that game went and how unlucky I was. Things on the conversation comes up in Settlers of Catan all the time, right? Man, that dice just does not want to roll sixes, and I think that's more something that you take away from the game. But if you're going to go back into the game and then understand, okay, I thought this was a game all about logic. No, it's really just kind of luck based. And then you go into the next game of the same. You're going to play the same game again. You're bringing different expectations, so you're sort of adjusting your expectations. So I will kind of put that in the category of something you take between games. You're sort of adjusting your expectations. Then what happens during a game other than the game itself? Stuff that's not in the rules, yeah?
It's like taunting or
Trash talking?
yes.
Yeah, trying to sort of mess with your opponent's psyche while the game is going on, yeah?
Also just kind of like more metagame stuff, like thinking like strategies like over in your head and like kind of playing out different scenarios like of what might happen.
Right. Does this person even know about this strategy? I'm seeing something that looks like the player might. But really, like, are you really going to do that? And happens in card games all the time. What else? What happens during the game other than the game itself? There are times when gameplay just stops, right? And I actually gave a couple of examples of that. What's out of game considerations that forces a game to like stop, or kind of like things you have to do to kind of like keep it going? Remember any of these things?
Shuffling a deck of cards.
Those are usually sort of mentioned in the rules. Or it's like you reach the end of the deck and then you have to reshuffle your deck. Physical safety considerations, for instance, somebody fell down in the middle of game of tag or something, and then it's like nothing in the rules say that you have to stop the game, but people do, right? Because you want to make sure the person's not hurt. It happens during the game. It's a metagaming sort of concern, but it's not necessarily, and the reason why it's important to the game is because you want people to say, hey, I want to play tag again. I want to play tag, but I want to know that I'm safe while I play tag. So if people sort of understand on the metagaming level that if somebody looks like they might be hurt, the game will not continue until we verify this person is not hurt or gotten the person adequate medical attention, for instance. But that doesn't necessarily always have to be like a physical hurt, right? That can be. There's a great account in the reading about playground groups fighting over what nice rules meant and the words that they were using to be able to describe what nice rules meant. And they had to become increasingly. At first, they were just starting with, we're going to be playing nice. They call it Rui rules, and then people who didn't want to play nice started joining the group to play Foursquare, and this is not the mobile game Foursquare, of course. This is the bouncing ball version of Foursquare. And then every time they did something that was outside of the rules, the people who were trying to play nice then had to add in get more and more specific about what nice meant, and that wasn't actually the intent. They didn't actually want to get all that specific. They just wanted people to play nice. Because once you get more and more specific, if you're still in the kind of like rules lawyering mode, then you can't actually be nice, right? So that's something that's happening during the game. The game's actually still being played. The part of the game of Foursquare is just bouncing this ball around, but there's all these rules negotiation that's happening to be able to try to steer the game into the direction that in this particular case, different groups of kids prefer to play the game. One group wanted to be very sort of competitive and winner takes all. The other side was like, the whole point of playing this game is so that we're not annoying other people. Kind of the traditional this divide, I guess. So Magic Gathering was, ostensibly. This could be like something that he came up with after he had designed the card game in order to justify why he designed the card game. Often when you ask a designer or a writer, why did you do this? It's very easy to come up with a justification that sounds good, but really isn't necessarily what they were thinking at the time when they came up with the game. So, and we have no way of knowing. Even Richard Garfield will not be able to tell you, honestly, whether that was the case or not. Because no one really remembers very clearly what they were thinking when they were designing the game. But it's a good justification, I think, which is, what does a player bring to a game of Magic? Well, they bring the deck of cards. Right, and the knowledge about how that deck is supposed to work because they built that deck themselves, and it's supposed to be this little engine to be able to play out a very specific strategy, which is something that they want to try for the next game. They may take the ante away, but certainly all of that knowledge about, okay, now I know that my deck is actually a pile of crap, for instance. What happens between games? You assemble new decks, you chat on forums, maybe new cards get released, and then you have to try to figure out how your deck is going to work against them. And then what happens during the game itself. I don't know actually how much taunting happens on Magic tournaments. Anyone play Magic competitively? Is that taunting?
Concept. I've never heard anyone actually taunt someone like, you suck, I'm going to destroy you.
I can imagine.
It's hilarious to think about.
I can imagine people going like, you sure you want to play that? The sort of thing.
I got goaded into that once, yeah. Actually. It did make me competitive and dying.
There's also a huge backlash right now of people being assholes during the game, essentially.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
The tournament organizers are specifically supposed to look out for that and try and not do that because people don't want to come back and play. So
right.
That's
because they're trying to build up a social community.
Yeah. I've already started playing Magic where when you have something with if you have a planeswalker with really fun with an ult that you can finally use, or if you've gotten to a position where you're about to use an ability that will almost win you the game, and so sometimes your opponent will just realize that he's unable to stop it and concede the game. And so I read a comic which was about someone like, oh my god, I'm going to get to use my Planeswalker's ult for the first time. And his opponent concedes, and he's like, I'll pay you money if you just like keep playing so I can.
Wow.
I don't think this didn't actually happen.
But that would be hilarious. Okay, all right.
It's an entirely different level of gameplay. There's a famous story about one of the best players in the game forgot to bring the one card in his deck that could win.
Oh.
So he would take complete control of the game and then couldn't do anything with it.
Okay.
He won the whole tournament.
He
He got every single person to concede before he had to play it, before he actually just had to win.
Sure.
They just assumed he had the card, 'cause why wouldn't he?
Yeah. Well.
And it brings another level to the metagame where like everyone knew the deck, so everyone knew exactly what he was trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time where he was just going through the motions, they were like, okay, sure, I know what happens.
Yeah, you know this person has this card. You just don't know that person had the card at home, right? Okay.
I guess like building off of that, in a very limited StarCraft, like higher up games that I saw on YouTube, there would be often times where neither base were destroyed, but one person would automatically concede defeat. And then
That's the majority of StarCraft games, actually.
I never understood it, but like they're not supposed to go on with something, oh, like their economy was completely destroyed.
Yeah.
Well, in that game, you can kind of lose at like minute marker 10, but not actually like lose until point.
You can stall the game for a very long time by just running around building pylons across the map.
Yep. It's a game full of positive feedback loops. So it's one of those things where once you feel that things are snowballing, if you are right, that things are actually snowballing out of your control, then yes, they are. There's no way to actually win. But I mean, yes, you can draw it out, but theoretically, there really shouldn't be no way to win because it's a game of positive loops, of positive feedback loops.
But some people quit prematurely.
Yes.
Like Idris was famous for rage quitting, and like commentators will look at his games and go,
did he just rage quit?
It's pretty even. You know, like,
Yeah.
You can still come back.
And that's the thing, is that if you are wrong and you are not actually in a bad situation, if you are actually pretty even, then because it's a game of limited information, imperfect information, you don't know exactly how bad off you are.
As I said, that there's like the person not having their like when bottom part of their deck there. So that sometimes you like if your opponent has something, you make them play it out because like okay, I want to make sure that like I've heard this like a similar story. Except the person didn't know how to win. Like they had it, but they just didn't know how to use it properly to win. And they still got their concede, except for like one person who was like, I'll make them play it out, and then they couldn't do it.
Yeah.
But one of my friends was playing online, and he was in a situation where he could make arbitrarily many copies of a card, okay? And every time he made these copies would last for one turn, each of them could do 2 damage. But his opponent had a card where like whenever your opponent gains a creature, you gain 1 life. And so his opponent made him go through this was online, and so his opponent made him go through and click and actually make like 50 copies of this card. And like it took he just spent like almost 10 minutes going through and making copies of this card. And if he misclicked if he like made a specific misclick that was easy to make, he would just lose the game on the spot.
So execution error, right? I mean that happens even in real-time games like StarCraft. It's like, yes, you should not be able to win this game unless your opponent makes a huge mistake. And if that happens, by the way, in those games.
There's another interesting thing that happens from like hidden information in League of Legends, where as a spectator, like you can see how much gold both teams have total. But you can't see even how much gold your own team has total when you're actually playing. Like you can only see like number of kills and maybe like number of towers and then like relative like farm counts basically. But you can't actually tell like, oh, we're actually up in gold. So like some of the interesting things will happen where like a team will be down like 8 kills or 10 kills or something, but still be like even or better in gold. Just from like having gathered different objectives and more farm and stuff.
And I think bringing this to a point of design, whether you allow players to concede a game in progress has actually been something that's being actively enacted in Dota and MOBAs. Games like League of Legends and in Dota 2. Dota 2 in particular, for a long time, and I'm not sure if it's still the case, actually did not allow you to concede a game in progress. Can anyone does anyone play Dota 2? Anyone confirm this?
I think it still doesn't allow you.
Still doesn't allow you?
I haven't played in a while.
Okay, it's definitely one of those things that struck me as what, and it's because of these reasons. It's because just because you think that you've lost the game doesn't necessarily mean that you've lost the game, and the designers decided that it's more important that you fight it out to the bitter end than to concede. But of course, just because you can't quit the game doesn't mean that you can't quit the application, or you're a leaver, huh? Yeah. What?
I said Alt F4.
Yeah, Alt F4, or you could just choose not to do anything, right? Deliberately walk into your opponent and feed. Let's see, your hand.
I mean, the reason, one of the reasons that I don't play Dota is because they don't allow you to quit.
Yeah.
And it's irritating to me when the game is clearly over for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good 40 plus minutes per game.
It can take a long time to finish out a game.
Yeah.
I'm I want to go do something else, or I just want to take a mental break, and they won't let me. So.
I watched a presentation on Doodle last week in another CMS class I was taking, and there, and I believe a lot of the justification for that was also that it irritated people who were allegedly more serious gamers because there are all these people just casually playing the game who will just give up and they ruin it for the rest of us who want to keep playing.
Yeah. And the other ones who feel if you are slightly behind, you can still fight back. Whereas people who's just sort of playing this game to chill out, so it's oh, I don't feel like fighting back right now. Let's start a new game. And if they had the ability to concede, they will do that. Oh, sorry.
I've been thinking, but I was just thinking, don't the most serious gamers join as a team and they're on?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even when you're playing by yourself in these games, high-level players don't concede because they know they can come back.
I mean, but it's a spectrum, right?
Yeah,
you don't start off by being serious. You start off by being sort of, hey, what's this game all about? And then there's this middle tier where you're still playing with strangers, but getting really interested in playing well. Right now, Todd Harper, which I was describing, is actually thinking pretty hard about what's the value of having taunt as a game mechanic, right? Fighting games have that that action, which wastes time which deliberately wastes time and opens you up to attack, right? But the whole point is that you will do that in order to sort of it's the digital equivalent of trash talking. It's I'm going to make this move, deliberately making myself vulnerable because I know I cannot lose this game because you are so bad, or I think you are so bad. And I think there's things like that in League of Legends, although I don't know about the other games. Yeah. And so the question is, and Todd is what is the real value of that? It's you can already taunt. It already takes, especially if you're playing something like a online game on a computer, typing out a taunting comment takes actions. That means that which takes your fingers away from actually playing the game, right? Because you have to type these words out. And as a result of that, it's already a drawback to be able to do that. Why do you need a game mechanic, which means that game designers are explicitly supporting you doing this sort of thing, right?
I think it actually most of those at least in League, when you have a character you have I think it's joke, laugh, taunt, and dance or something. There are actually people just do it for fun. It's never actually so for example in high elo streams sometimes they'll just all 10 people will group up and have dance parties and kind of an implicit agreement to not fight and just goof around basically.
Right.
Other times it's really funny. I saw this stream where someone was getting jumped on by 2 people and decided to dodge a skill shot by doing a taunt, which is taking his action going like this, and then dodging the skill shot and then just walking out. So it's just funny little haha bye kind of things. Right.
Yeah. In StarCraft there is you can make your characters dance just by clicking back and forth real fast, and then they just walk left, walk right, walk left, walk right. And I've seen that, and other things, and other game mechanics that aren't explicitly taunt mechanics, to be able to tell the other player, no, you basically lost. You should just concede now. Or even if you don't concede, I'm going to win this game anyway. So you might as well can't see now. But then they also have a slash dance command to actually make your characters dance, and that's a game mechanic, right? That's actually like when you slash dance, you do no damage, and you will take whatever damage is being inflicted on you deliberately. And I've seen a couple of games lost because someone decided to type slash dance, and it's like, you know, that's the risk. But again, that's the game explicitly supporting this sort of behavior. It's supposed to be meta. It's supposed to be the sort of thing that happens above the game. We're going to be playing a bunch of games where it's obviously these are board games, and the kind of talking, the kind of communication, the kind of like what's going on in this game and what you're going to take out from this game, it's all happening kind of above the board as opposed to inside the game. Except for maybe Space Alert. Maybe Space Alert, it is all just part of the game. So I want you to be thinking about this, about what's happening above the table, right? About what is about like information that you're exchanging or interactions that you're having that's not part of the game itself. But then also, what does the game explicitly do to be able to support social interaction? To be able to either support this kind of social interaction that's happening inside the game system, or to be able to draw on the social relationships that you have with the other people on the table to be able to enhance the game experience. You had your hand up?
I was gonna say, like, so in League, like, theoretically it can be real. I play characters who often it is the enemy should not be trying to use their abilities on me because of the rest of them. And like a specific case, I just set their taunting, and then their enemy uses all their abilities on me,
right.
and then we win, and then my team ends up winning a fight as a direct result of that.
Yeah.
And so like sometimes taunting someone into laughing could actually like happen.
Yeah. But you could arguably have achieved the same goal without an explicit taunt, right? You know, it's like just by like standing right in front of your opponent.
If you're taunting, you sort of tell the opponent that you're not really paying attention, that you could also be attacked, that like you're less likely to dodge something that they send your way.
True. So there's something to keep in mind when you're designing your games is that, you know, there are all these things about. It'd be fun to be able to design mechanics to be able to support these kinds of social interaction, but you got to be very, very careful, right? And every time you design something, you're actually taking you're both giving your players a tool to do something else, and that is now officially mandated by your game because you have a rule that actually says that this is something that you can do. And they may use that rule creatively, or they may use that rule destructively. And again, it all comes down to testing. You don't always know, but you should know what you're trying to achieve with the game socially when you're making a game. So you should have that conversation today when we finally break up into your teams. But for now, what we're going to do is just play a bunch of board games. But it's primarily about sort of social play. And then on Wednesday, I think we go into Burnley Decoded, which is like games with very changey rules. John, you want to talk a little bit about these games that you brought?
Do it right now?
Yeah. And then maybe then we'll set up the games and have a break simultaneously.
All right, I'll start with this one. Has anyone played this? Okay, maybe you can help me explain it. Okay. I watched like 2 hours of Let's Play videos, and I still don't really understand it. There's really like a lot to it. There's like a million components. There's a lot going on. But the gist of it is that everyone gets to pick a role, and each role, it's like pretty much scanned straight from the TV show. Have you guys seen Battlestar Galactica? It's a really good show. It's on Netflix. You should check that out. And actually, it seems like the consensus on the like board game community online actually really likes this game. So it seems like there's a lot to it. But essentially, you choose like a character from the game, and they have different powers. And some of you are human, and some of you are Cylons. And Cylons are robots that look just like humans. And so there's like spaceships coming to get you, and some of the Cylons are on the ship. And their goal is to basically wipe out humanity. The humans' goal is to survive, and you don't know who is who. There's a critical moment in time where the Cylons will reveal themselves and get like even better powers, is how I understand it. So there's like lots of cards. So there's like a military leader, a political leader, and they each get different decks of cards. And so if you're like the political leader, you basically can put people in the brig.
I think I don't know. There's so many stuff.
There's so many components to this game. Yeah.
It is, I will say, it is the most complicated game that I find fun.
Yeah.
And I think this is like true of many players.
I think you have to find it fun because after you invest all that time to like learn how to play it, you're not going to not play it.
Most games with lots of rules are sort of have lots of the rules are sort of unnecessary, and like you could say you can literally clear out 90% of this. And this is a game which has all these like weird rules that you think are like it has too many rules, but it's still fun.
Yeah. So depending on who you are, you can either be like a military leader, or a political leader, or
pilot going outside and pulling stuff.
You could be like a pilot. But yeah, the political leader like gets to put people in jail. The military leader gets nukes, and they get to like strategically use them against the enemy. And whenever there's sort of like a decision that has to do with fighting, they get to take the lead on that. So there's different roles, and it's interesting that each role has like different types of cards that sort of support that role. What else? So a turn is like really complicated. There's a bunch of steps. Like you draw cards, and then you like collectively face an objective or like some
crisis.
A crisis, yeah. And you sort of all have to like vote or commit resource cards, of which some can be good and some can be bad. So the Cylons try to like commit bad resource cards to like make sure that this objective is not completed, and the humans tend to put in like the good ones so that the objective is completed. But there's like a lot of metagame where the Cylons don't really want you to know that they're Cylons, and there's special abilities where you can like flip a card up and like see what everyone's resource cards that I think they're called skill cards are committed. It's a cool simulator, yeah, and you can like jump, there's so many components, and probably don't want to play this game because I think that the playthrough is like 2 or 3 hours. But all the game bits are really intriguing, so you might want to check it out.
Yeah. It's a great game to know about. It's a great game to play if you've got like a full weekend, dedicated to board gaming or something like that.
Yeah. And there's expansions too. Like this is a pretty popular game.
I think we did play this in 2 hours with like specialists.
I think you'd have to leave it though to explain it to everyone.
I want to make sure there's enough time for teams to actually talk to each other about targets too. So there's probably not time. But I asked you to do that so that people will actually sort of get a sense of what this game's all about. Also, look at the bits. One of the nice things I like are these little spinning counters. It's just a counter: 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, which means you have no more population. But it's a nice way to be able to keep track of stats. And
is that okay for that game?
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great.
This game, Space Lord, has anyone played this one? It's really cool. I think this game is really neat. Let's see, so maybe I can just talk about the board. So it's like this cooperative game. You're all playing as a team. You're like this crew on a spaceship here. And it goes like this. You have 10 minutes to prepare a hyper jump. And during those 10 minutes, new information is coming in from this audio CD that you play. There's 16 different tracks, so there's a lot of like replayability. And at the end of the game, so it's like this frantic planning phase. And there are going to be periods where you can't talk to your teammates. There's periods where you can trade cards. And basically, there'll be these trajectories on which enemies. So there's the red part of the ship, the white part of the ship, and the blue part of the ship. They each have an upper deck and a lower deck. And there'll be enemies coming at you from space, and you need to sort of like man your shields, but also like use energy to shoot the objects down and basically like survive. And if they do 6 damage to any one part of your spaceship, then it's basically game over. And when you take damage, you get sort of debuffs. Your shields and guns and such become weaker. And so you have little avatars that move around on the board. And you need to be in each room to do your action. And so there's an A action, a B action, and a C action. And so just taking a look at the white one, you all start up here. The C action is a computer, so the first 2 moves of the game, I think there's 12 moves, and there's 3 sections. And the first 2 moves of each section, you have to have someone hit the computer. And then you can this is the gun, this is the shields. The gun and shields are powered by green cubes that go down here. You have to constantly be replenishing them. Let's see. There are also internal threats that, like, intruders will come onto your spaceship, and you have to like get these bots up and running to take care of them. Let's see. There's some actually really good tutorials and playthroughs on YouTube. So if you don't get a chance to play it, you should definitely check it out.
The playthroughs on YouTube are probably pretty hilarious, I'm gonna guess.
They're amazing. Yeah, I saw the solitaire one where this guy was playing solitaire. It was like a really good way to learn the game.
Playing this solitaire is probably a lot like playing FTL, if anyone's played that on iPad or computer.
It reminded me of FTL.
Yeah. Imagine FTL where every single crew member is actually controlled by a different player, and you start to get a sense of what basically it's like.
So you put these action cards down, but you don't actually resolve the game until after 10 minutes. 10 minutes are over. And there's like different difficulties, so you can put in like harder cards. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of details that I'm missing.
I mean, the primary one is that if you play Robo Rally or any other kind of game that's got a little bit of a programming bent to it, you're basically programming your character to do these things. You're kind of figuring out and visualizing where things are going to go, and you can talk about what you're going to do and whether people should do at specific turns. But you won't actually know how it actually runs out until after the 10 minutes is spent. And then the big part of the fun is just flipping over the cards, seeing what people actually did, realizing that, oh no, wait, we both meant to click the same button at the same time.
Yeah. Or you're in the wrong room. You think you're in one room, but you're in another, and you're clicking the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Or like two people take an elevator at the same turn, and if you look at the rules, actually it delays one person's actions a bunch. So like all your cards are laid out, and that's your plan, but then a delay happens, and you have to shift all your cards to the right, and it screws things up.
It's a game about coordination where every single mechanic in the game is to prevent that coordination from actually happening.
Yeah, I can see that. Like there are, if you listen to the tracks, there are periods where you're not allowed to communicate, which can be really frustrating. And they're constantly throwing new monsters at you from all different directions. So managing like where the monsters are coming from, where the threats are coming from. So these are the cards that you can either move rooms, either to the red side or to the blue side, or you can hit buttons. And you only have like a certain amount of these in your hand, and you sort of have to coordinate with your teammates to sort of like get the action that you want to help your team. That's this game. Is there anything I'm missing?
Pandemic's next.
Yeah, you've got Pandemic, right?
But yeah, so Pandemic is cool. I played it a few times actually. And I lost every time. You guys want to beat this game?
Huh?
Have you beat this game?
Have I beat this game?
So this is a co-op game where everyone on your team is playing against the board, basically. You're like playing against the computer. So you're all a team. Basically, there's like a deadly virus outbreak, 4 deadly virus outbreaks all over the world, and they're spreading. And you need to research the cure for various diseases. I thought these were really cool. Like, these are the diseases. They come in little petri dishes. So there's different roles, which is cool, because in co-op games, we need to have roles. So there are 5 roles. And let's see. So at each turn, you put a couple of cards. And basically, they're city cards, so there are cities all over the map. And your little guys basically go all over the world to treat disease. Set up research centers, research cures, and you need a certain amount of cards, like research cure, you need like 5 of that color. You have a role if you're a researcher, you only need 4. And so, yeah, like the medic can cure people faster. There's like a logistics guy that can basically like fly people around the world with ease. You only have so many actions. And constantly, like, there'll be breakouts where if you get too many diseases in one area, it'll cause the neighborhoods around it to be infected. So you sort of have to do chain reactions. And again, it's like coordinating with your team in a cooperative manner to sort of conquer the game, which I wasn't able to do. We lost a bunch. It's kind of hard. Maybe it was bad.
It is a tough game, but the more you play it, definitely the more you start to get used to how the systems work, especially the explosions, the virus explosions. Forbidden Island is, same designer, and I feel the rules are a little bit easier to understand. It's not actually all that different a game, so we'll also bring it out for you to check out. And these 3 games over here, Shadows of the Camelot, Descent, and Wrath of Ashadalan, we're here primarily so that you can take a look at them, but we don't have enough time to play these games in class today. But they all have this like Shadows of Camelot is basically sort of Arthurian traitor mechanics. Descent, and I think Ashadalan's actually just Dungeons and Dragons, only sort of packaged into a nice little. You don't have to think too hard about creating your own character ahead of time, so you can just jump right in and get into the playing part of Dungeons and Dragons. It's kind of interesting. They take a chunk of the meta out, the whole like how do you create a character, for instance, which a lot of people do enjoy in Dungeons and Dragons, but does take an awful long time. And how do you create a campaign? Well, the box comes with a campaign and all the maps that you need. So this is basically one box of Dungeons and Dragons campaign. And that's going into dungeons and killing monsters and getting loot. I think we just played.
Yeah.
Actually, did you have something to say earlier?
No.
Okay.
I was gonna make comments based more than that. I just played the expansion the other day where it features double actions.
Oh.
And threats which things such as threats which call in other threats. Threats which phase in and out of reality every other round and you can only target on specific rounds. Threats which jump between different zones.
I can see that.
There are some just incredibly nasty threats there. There's
a lot of expansions are designed for people who've kind of mastered the original game, right? Because theoretically, if you play the game often enough and you're coordinated enough as a group, you should be able to beat everything that the game throws at you. Sure. And same goes for Pandemic. The question is that coordination part, and some luck, of course. Though all of the audio tracks are also available on MP3, so if somebody wants to play Space Alert, I would suggest actually taking a corner of the room, maybe that one, because you need to be able to hear what's going on. Actually, you just plug it in there.
It's pretty loud.
Yeah, it's pretty loud.
Bring your computer, if your computer has a CD drive, just put it over there.
It feels like the tracks are designed to sort of disorient you.
Yeah.
So
but you need to be able to hear what's going on. So it needs to be loud enough that everyone around the table can hear on top of all the talking that you're going to be making in a game. So give it a try. Just on computer speakers, and if we can't hear what's going on, then we'll try it again with the room speakers, which you'll definitely be able to hear. But definitely try to pick a corner where the noise of the other games isn't going to stomp on you. And yeah, Battlestar, just take a look at the parts. Yep. There's no time to play this game today.
2 to 4 players for Forbidden Island takes about half an hour. 2 to 4 for Pandemic.
For Pandemic, 2 to 4.
Yeah, and then this one 1 to 5. Yeah, so those 3 games easily played.
4 plus 4 plus 5. That's not everybody in class, right? Wait, no, that's 12. That's 13 people. Okay. Yeah, if anyone's sick, and this is up.
I vote we close down the ports of Madagascar. That's play.